Do you believe that? This is an individual who's known for bluster, likes to show off at rallies. Does it really matter when it's Donald Trump?
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me. It is a big freaking deal, to use the Internet's colloquial slang.
You're quoting Joe Biden.
Of course.
Yeah.
But look, it's in some ways it's not a surprise because he's called NATO obsolete. He said that he will not defend Europe if they're attacked. But this is... And some people are saying, calm down. He wasn't so bad in his first administration on Russia and Ukraine. He gave javelins when Obama wouldn't. He kept the sanctions on Crimea. So there is a bit of an argument if you forget the perfect phone call, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to stop pretending. Magical thinking is over. Trump 2 is going to be worse in terms of the wreckage to American foreign policy than Trump 1 was. John Bolton has warned over and over again that Trump is serious this time, and he's going to pull the United States out of NATO. I don't think he even has to do that, though. I think if he makes this statement a couple more times as president, NATO's a paper tiger.
Well, it's interesting to hear your point on the javelins, because that is actually something that Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S. brought up in an interview with Joe and I just last week. She said, look, the Trump administration, he's the one that provided lethal aid to Ukraine. There is now a real question as to whether or not that lethal aid, monetary aid as well, is going to continue. That is the issue that is now before the House after the Senate passed a package that would include $60 billion in total. Not all of that just cash going to Ukraine. A lot of that would be spent here for the creation of weapons that would then go to Ukraine. What changes for Ukraine if the $60 billion comes through, and what happens if it doesn't?
So Ukraine stays in the fight if the money comes through. If the money does not come through, Ukraine may not be able to hold out a whole lot longer. It's really existential at this point. The situation on the front line is terrible. The fire rates between the Russian side and the Ukrainian side are 8-1. Some say 5-1. I tended to take the 8-1 figure more seriously. And people are saying that commanders are saying that they can't make the decisions that they would make if they had enough artillery.
Melinda Haring, we heard from the Estonian Foreign Intelligence Service this week, and I wondered if you could help us put this in perspective, because it's a startling read from Bloomberg. The Kremlin has about 3 to 4 times more artillery than Ukrainian forces after boosting its ammo production to as many as 4 million units last year. That gap will widen, they found, since it's, quote, almost certain that Western deliveries will not keep pace. Is that with or without this funding?
So they're looking at the estimates now. The EU pledged 1 million shells by this spring, 1 million shells to. So
can we close that gap? I guess is the question.
No, the EU has only delivered 330,000. The North Koreans have delivered 1 million shells to Moscow. So there's a huge gap, and the Ukrainians have responded smartly by putting a lot of money into drones. And they invested an enormous amount in drones, and they now have long-range drones. And we saw what they did in the Black Sea, and we see what they're doing in a number of places in Russia. Is it going to be enough to hold the front line? My concern is that it won't be. And a lot of analysts are saying this is getting worse, and we expect. Right now, the city that everyone's watching that's in ruins, that the Russians are likely to take by the end of the month, is Avdiivka. And that will be one more city in eastern Ukraine where there's absolutely nothing left. But then the line will continue to ebb away.
So time is of the essence, I think, is your primary message here. Even as we consider the fact that the House could perhaps, through a discharge petition, ultimately pass this aid, the point has been consistently made. A lot of this is being spent at home. It's going into the defense industrial base. It's being spent in U.S. states. How quickly, realistically, does it translate into Ukraine getting its hands on what it needs, being able to use this in the fight? I just wonder what kind of lag we're dealing with here.
So the Defense Department is preparing for scenarios, and they can turn things on pretty quickly. So if the House makes the right decision, hopefully as soon as possible, they can move these weapons and turn things around on the front lines quite quickly. That's not the only way that the House could change things around. Speaker Johnson is saying no way. So he's interesting. He said that we cannot afford to let Vladimir Putin win, but then he's also said the bill is dead on arrival, and he's not allowing it on the floor. So a number of Democrats have said, let's use a discharge petition. This is a Hail Mary. You need all the Democrats plus 4 or 5 Republicans. There's another possibility now, and I think this is a live possibility. The House Speaker is holding on by a razor thin.
Indeed.
Yes. So there's a possibility that Republicans could threaten his speakership.